Like the smell test to me initially, but I can see from the model's testing output here that it actually didn't manage to pass the test. And so I'm looking here and it looks like it might be something with like a missing dependency in the environment, maybe Pedantic's not installed. And so this PR might be something that I check back out to my computer and rerun the test locally. And maybe if I see that this is valuable, this is something I can go back to my environment configuration and reinstall. And ultimately, I think we find Codex to be like as trustworthy, if not more trustworthy, than our own coworkers. I don't have the kind of access to like what Andre did on any given day in terms of like the logs or the actual test outputs. And I think as we move towards a world where AI writes more and more code, this kind of verifiability.
So I'm super excited to share this with all of you today. I've been working on this for more than 2 years. Actually, a lot of that time with Gary. It's been a real blast. And we've been using this internally and seeing a lot of really magical moments start to appear. We're sharing this with you today because we think this does represent a glimpse into the future of how software engineering is done. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how I use the product. So in the lead up to this launch, I've ended up doing a lot of coordination work. I haven't had as much time for coding as I may be used to, as much as I maybe ideally would like. Maybe try to connect with that a little bit. And so if I'm like reviewing someone else's code or reading through Slack, or playing with the product just to make sure that it's developing well, sometimes I'll have an idea of like a code change I might like to make, a change in the product or some refactor, and I'll just kick it off in Codex. It takes like 30 seconds. It's a very lightweight thing to do, and then I'll go back to Slack or wherever I am. And then later I'll come back, and the task is sitting there, and it's done. And sometimes it's a small task. It's like a simple string change. Sometimes I was ambitious, and I put in a request for like a bigger refactor or some sort of feature. And this by no means works all the time. This is a research preview. We think it's still early days. But sometimes it's like a multi-hundred line diff, and I open it, and I start reading through it, and I'm like, wow, this actually looks like it's correct. And I read through what the model did. Maybe the model ran some tests. Maybe those tests failed, and the model fixed the test failure. I look on the left, and all the little test results are green. And I'm like, this change actually looks really good. Let me open a PR. Maybe I'll send it to a colleague for review. Maybe they'll approve it, and we'll merge it, and it lands in the code base. And then I take a step back, and I realize I just landed like a non-trivial change, like a large change, often in our code base, and that branch never even hit my laptop. It was just something that happened completely through this interaction with an async delegation to one of these agents. And when that works, it's really a magical moment, and it's really amazing. And when I talk to other colleagues, they're using the product too, and they're using it in different ways. And they're having magical moments and magical interactions with it of their own. And you can see some of those stories in the videos that we're linking from the blog associated with this release. So that's all very exciting to see. But what what I'm most excited about is to share this with all of you today and see what you all do. One of the things that I find really exciting about how Codex works is it has very non-human strengths and weaknesses. And so it really means that you get much more out of it if you start thinking of it as not just a static tool that you just use, like, just without having to build expertise. But if you really optimize your code base around what you can do, you start, like, honestly, most of what Codex benefits from is just what is good software engineering practices in terms of modular code bases, good tests and things like that. You're able to just move so fast. We've seen that happen internally with many people out of OpenAI. We are releasing this today to ChatGPT enterprise teams and pro users. We're going to have very generous rate limits. We're going to start out without any additional pricing. Over time, as we start to get some feedback and some sense of how people are using it, we'll introduce more rate limits. We'll be rolling out to Plus and EU users. We'll be thinking about if there's pricing for how to get additional queries. In general, we're just so excited to see how people use it because we've seen every single person at OpenAI uses Codex differently. Now, we're not nearly at the end of this journey. We're very much at the beginning. We're going to continue to improve Codex. We're going to make it be integrated into far more systems, like either your issue tracker, release an API, so that you can have it automatically be integrated to your CI. So if there's a CI error, you don't have to fix it anymore. Codex takes care of it. We also are continuing to develop Codex CLI, which again is a local agent that runs on GraphPub. We're releasing a mini model today, and we're also going to be releasing signing with ChatGPT to make it easier to get up and running. Now, if you think about it, there's two different form factors that we talked about. There's the local synchronous on your computer version, but there's also what Codex is, asynchronous in the cloud, runs on its own computer. And we think that the future is going to be these two systems coming together. Right? What you really want is you want a remote coworker with its own computer, but who can also look over your shoulder. And so you're there typing away, you're working some change, you're like, I want to go to lunch. Codex, can you finish this? It just takes it over seamlessly and runs into the cloud. Or if you have a question about something or you want to pull down a change because your dependency isn't installed or something like that, it all just moves around totally seamlessly. So it's a coworker, it's a intern you can delegate to, it's a mentor, it's a pair programmer, and all of these other things. And so our goal really is to help accelerate the useful work that is done, so there's more software engineers in the world, so there's more programming that's done that is useful and able to move forward the world. So we're just so excited to see what you're going to do for that. Thank you.
On Focus is brought to you by BAM Mutual. Put America's strengths to work in your portfolio. BAM insured municipal bonds. Protect your investments with an added layer of security and guaranteed income. Invest with strength. Build a stronger tomorrow with BAM Mutual. Check in with Eric Kazaski, Senior Municipal Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. He's safely ensconced down there in Princeton, New Jersey. Eric, I feel like I can't start any discussion on municipal bonds without asking, can I still have my tax exemption, or is President Trump in this maybe new budget, will that be going away? What's the status there?
Yeah, if you asked the market 2 months ago, it probably would have been decidedly on the fear side of the equation that the exemption was going away. I think at this point, given what the House is proposing, we could sort of safely say that the exemption is going to be around, and you and I are going to be talking about munis for some time to come.
How will the adjustments to the SALT deduction cap really affect taxpayers in high states? I mean, I'm just thinking about the potential economic impacts, and it seems to be a huge windfall.
Yeah, I mean, when they lowered the cap to an unlimited basis to 10,000, right? What that did is it forced some buyers who were on the margin into munis because they were just looking for more ways to shield taxable income, especially in those states like California, New York, New Jersey, with high in-state income tax rates. Raising it to 30,000, on the margin, we think it's going to have negligible impact to our space. I think what really could be a game changer is if they go back to sort of an unlimited basis, phase out in income, because there have been a lot of people in the lower brackets who've gotten into munis via separately managed account platforms. So it could affect the demand on what we're seeing there.
All right, Eric, I mean, I love some of these rates that I see in your notes. Tax equivalent yields in California are 6.86% for 10 years, while New York is 6.44. Boy, as a salesman, I can sell that. I mean, are people rushing into the muni bond space?
Not as much as you would think. And look, it gets even better. If you look at the tax equivalent yield for, let's say, a single A revenue bond, far out the curve, which has been performing the worst by far this year, right? The long end of the yield curve, you're approaching 9.5%. That's an easy sale for someone who has a high taxable income and wants to shield that from income taxes, right? Like you said, it's an easy call to make. And we're surprised that we're not seeing as much demand as you would think, given where taxable equivalent yields are. We think that's going to change over the next several months as we head into the more technically strong period of the year, May, June, July, where we have a lot of cash coming back to investors. And I think that most likely all that's going to get back into munis.
Talk to us about the supply front. You said in your note that we're heading into the most technically strong start of the period this year. Why is that so?
Well, I mean, where supply is up right now about 20% year over year. There's about 16 billion on the forward calendar, right? Just looking at the next 30 days. With all of that cash coming back to investors, and we're talking, upwards of $40 billion a month over the next 3 months, all of those monies coming back are going to need supply to sort of absorb that. So, we think given the forward supply of 16 billion, given what we're seeing on the prospective calendar, we think that there is going to be a push for a lot of these bankers to go out and talk to their clients and sort of tell them now is the time. The tax exemption fear has sort of been set aside. Rates are sort of in this favorable channel. Let's get to market and see what the market's going to give us.
All right, so talk to us about credit quality out there. It has not been a problem, even during the pandemic, because there's so much stimulus out there. But how's credit quality these days? Because there's a lot of economic uncertainty out there when you see companies pulling their guidance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton, right? And look, at the end of the day, munis are an uncorrelated asset class, right? So if we, head into an economic downturn or stocks perform very poorly, munis are going to sort of be insulated from that. But what we are seeing through our TVs and more importantly, the data we have on terminal is really that negative sentiment, via headlines on these local levels has really sort of ramped up. And we're talking about from late 2023 till now, our negative subtracting really hasn't sort of returned to historical norms. To us, that means that we're probably going to see some spread widening over the next 12 to 18 months and really not reflected in current spreads that we're seeing in the market. Like anything in munis, we're very supply demand driven. And so with all that cash coming back to investors, we just might be kicking some problems down the road because they're willing to sort of finance at lower rates and, tighter spreads over the next several months.
Talk to us about higher ed. We've seen a lot of bonds come from Harvard and some other universities. A, how are they being received by the market? And B, how are they trading?
They're trading decently. There has been a little bit of spread widening if we're looking especially on the ones that have corporate CUSIPs. When we sort of look at them plotted to, other AAA corporates or even AA corporates, since that's a larger universe. But there has been more and more IBs looking to come to market, especially given the sort of, House approach that they might be looking to raise the tax on their endowments. By the back of the envelope math, it's going to go from costing Harvard about 35, million a year to almost $500 million a year. So it's a real cost to these universities to have the, taxation rate on their endowments increase. And I think that they're concerned that the market will be a little jittery at that point. Look, at the end of the day, these are 100-year institutions. They're not going anywhere. So I think that they're just trying to sort of get ahead of any potential, headline risk.
What about for issuers? How do they navigate increased borrowing costs and potential changes to tax exemptions? We have all this market volatility. I mean, you have to maintain investor confidence.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a really good job of, continuing to put supply into the marketplace, and the bankers, to their credit, have really sort of gone out in the last year and used that sort of taxation loss, or tax exemption loss fear talking point to get more supply into the market ahead of any potential tax changes. Now, look, as it turns out, that really wasn't the case, right? Which is good for the market. But at the end of the day, a lot of these issuers, they had to issue regardless of what the prevailing rate market is. And the good thing about the muni market is that bonds are sold with a call option. And while you can't advance refund bonds anymore, bankers have creative ways to sort of get around things with derivatives and synthetics. But there is a 10-year call option, right? So if you issue bonds now and rates go down over the next 10 years, they have the option of refund.
Create a workflow through the Explorer panel and guide users to it with flow logic. To create a new workflow, navigate to the workflow icon in the Explorer panel. Let's rename this workflow so that we stay organized. I'll call it test workflow. Now, you can populate this additional workflow as you would any other. Let's add a simple send message card so that when we test this workflow, we know that we're in the right spot. So let's say you're in the test workflow. Great. Now, let's return to our main workflow. We can guide users to any other workflow using transition logic. So over here, now that we've added an additional workflow, we should be able to see a card with the name of that workflow that will guide users to it. All we need to do is click and drag that into our node, and any user that ends up at this node will be automatically transitioned to the separate workflow. Let's make sure this happens by drawing our path to the end here, and now let's test it out. So if I say hi, right away we see who's located now in the testing workflow. Awesome. Nodes are fundamental building blocks of your chatbot that you connect together to design a conversation. To create a node, you can right-click anywhere in the studio and select Standard Node. You can also drag any card from the card tray into the editor. The card will then place itself into a brand new node. Connect nodes by drawing paths between entry and exit ports of individual nodes. To create a path, click on the exit port of any node and drag the path that appears to the entry port of any other node. Doing so will create a line or a path that tells your bot where you want the conversation to go. To delete a path, hover over it and click on the X that appears. Exit ports are only associated with certain types of cards, typically where you've asked your user to make a decision, or you've decided which way you want your bot's conversation to go. Placing a card inside a node tells your bot which action to take. To create a card, drag the action you'd like your bot to take over from the card tray into any node. You can also drag any card into the editor to create a brand new node. You can open the card tray by clicking Add Card from any node, or you can hover over the left-hand panel. To keep the card tray permanently open, just click the pin icon at the top right to pin it to your screen. Each node can contain multiple cards, and your bot will execute the cards in the order you place them in, from top to bottom. You can drag and drop cards to rearrange them wherever you like. Transitions are instructions that tell your bot in which direction it should move the conversation. There are two types of transitions in botnets: expression and intent. Expression transitions move the user along a certain path if a certain condition is met. So to set up this kind of transition, we'll take our expression card over into the node and define our condition. Let's say we want to catch any user who inputs a number between 5 and 10. We'll label this card as user input is a number between 5 and 10. And now, anytime that our user inputs a number between 5 and 10 at this node, we'll be able to move them along a certain path. The other kind of transition in botnets are intent-based. These transition to a certain path if your node or bot detects that a user wants to do something specific. So here, we'll take an intent card over from the card tray and drag it into the same node. We'll label this intent as copy. And now we have to type out what we want our user or bot to detect. So in this case, let's say it's that our user wants to order a coffee. Now, whenever our bot detects that a user would like to order a coffee, it'll be able to move them down a separate conversation path. So let's put everything together. For now, if they want to put in a number, they'll get directed to this path, and if they want to order a coffee, they'll get directed to this path. Let's test it out. So we say hi, let's put in a number between 5 and 10, and it correctly recognizes that. Let's try again and try to order a coffee. And it recognizes that as well. Nicely done. Add a knowledge base by uploading plain text, a document, or a website URL. On the Explorer panel, navigate to the book icon to add a knowledge base. Here, you'll be prompted to upload a document. In this case, I'll upload a PDF. From this menu, you can also rename the knowledge base. In this case, I'll make sure that we create a workflow through the Explorer panel and guide users to it with flow logic. To create a new workflow, navigate to the workflow icon in the Explorer panel. Let's rename this workflow so that we stay organized. I'll call it test workflow. Now, you can populate this additional workflow as you would any other. Let's add a simple send message card so that when we test this workflow, we know that we're in the right spot. So let's say you're in the test workflow. Great. Now, let's return to our main workflow. We can guide users to any other workflow using transition logic. So over here, now that we've added an additional workflow, we should be able to see a card with the name of that workflow that will guide users to it. All we need to do is click and drag that into our node, and any user that ends up at this node will be automatically transitioned to the separate workflow. Let's make sure this happens by drawing our path to the end here, and now let's test it out. So if I say hi, right away we see we were located now in the testing workflow. Awesome. Nodes are fundamental building blocks of your chatbot that you connect together to design a conversation. To create a node, you can right-click anywhere in the studio and select Standard Node. You can also drag any card from the card tray into the editor. The card will then place itself into a brand new node. Connect nodes by drawing paths between entry and exit ports of individual nodes. To create a path, click on the exit port of any node and drag the path that appears to the entry port of any other node. Doing so will create a line or a path that tells your bot where you want the conversation to go. To create a path, hover over it and click on the X that appears. Exit ports are only associated with certain types of cards, typically where you've asked your user to make a decision, or you've decided which way you want your bot's conversation to flow. Placing a card inside a node tells your bot which action to take. To create a node, drag the action you'd like your bot to take over from the card tray into any node. You can also drag any card into the editor to create a brand new node. You can open the card tray by clicking Add Card from any node, or you can hover over the left-hand panel. To keep the card tray permanently open, just click the pin icon at the top right of your screen. Each node can contain multiple cards, and your bot will execute the cards in the order you place them in, from top to bottom. You can drag and drop cards to rearrange them however you like. Transitions are instructions that tell your bot in which direction it should move the conversation. There are two types of transitions in botnets: expression and intent. Expression transitions move the user along a certain path if a certain condition is met. So to set up this kind of transition, we'll take our expression card over into the node and define our condition. Let's say we want to catch any user who inputs a number between 5 and 10. We'll label this card as user input is a number between 5 and 10. And now, anytime that our user inputs a number between 5 and 10 at this node, we'll be able to move them along a certain path. The other kind of transition in botnets are intent-based. These transition to a certain path if your node or bot detects that a user wants to do something specific. So here, we'll take an intent card over from the card tray and drag it into the same node. We'll label this intent as copy. And now we have to type out what we want our user or bot to detect. So in this case, let's say it's that our user wants to order a coffee. Now, whenever our bot detects that a user would like to order a coffee, it'll be able to move them down a separate conversation path. So let's put everything together. For now, if they want to put in a number, they'll get directed to this path. And if they want to order a coffee, they'll get directed to this path. Let's test it out. So we say, hi, let's put in a number between 5 and 10, and it correctly recognizes that. Let's try again and try to order a coffee. And it recognizes that as well. Nicely done. Add a knowledge base by uploading plain text, a document, or a website URL. On the Explorer panel, navigate to the book icon to add a knowledge base. Here, you'll be prompted to upload a document. In this case, I'll upload a PDF. From this menu, you can also rename the knowledge base. In this case, I'll make sure that we understand what it is so we stay organized. You can also add a description of the knowledge base so that any of your collaborators will be able to stay up to date on what your knowledge bases are. In this case, I'll add a description. So this is Will P. Collins' novel, The Newsroom. Now, we'll be able to ask questions about the contents of this novel, and our chatbot will be able to answer them. Let's return to the main workflow. From over here, you'll want to make sure that any node where you want your user to be able to ask questions of the knowledge base has knowledge answering enabled. This means that your bot will check the knowledge base for answers first before moving on to other parts of the flow. So over here in the inspector window, I see that knowledge answering is already enabled. Great. So now, let's give it a shot. Our bot should be able to answer any question about the contents of this novel. So I'm going to ask it, who is Rachel Barrender, who is the main character of this novel? And now, you wait a sec, and the bot should be able to answer correctly. And there we go, a correct answer. Awesome. Navigate to the personality agent to adjust your bot's personality. From this menu, you can give your bot a description of its personality, and then BotPress's AI will make sure that every time your bot sends a message, it will speak in the voice that you've given it. For this example, let's try telling our bot to speak in the elegant, floral language of the narrator of a Victorian novel. Then we make sure the personality agent is enabled, save our changes, and then we can test it out. So let's say hi. And there we go. Our bot immediately translates our messages. Awesome. Create new variables directly from your workflow's properties. From each workflow's inspector here on the right, you'll be able to select plus variable to create a new variable. In this menu, you can select the variable's type, which refers to the kind of information it stores, input its name, which is how you'll refer to this variable in later parts of your chatbot's flow, and its description. This is for internal use, so your teammates, or you in the future, will be able to remember what information each variable stores. BotPress includes different types of variables, which vary based on where they can be accessed in your chatbot's flow. There are 3 different types of variables built in BotPress. Workflow variables can only be used within a single workflow. To create a workflow variable, select plus variable in the inspector pane. Session variables can be accessed in all flows, but only within a single conversation. You can create a session variable using the execute code card as follows. You can use the code session.variable name and set the variable to a sound. And finally, user variables can follow a user between different conversations. User variables can be created by accessing the chatbot settings from the Explorer menu and selecting variables here. Then it's a question of selecting plus variable here. To reference a user variable later in your conversation, say in a send message method, you can access it via @user.variable name, where you can replace variable name with whatever you name your variable. Different variables in BotPress hold different kinds of information. These are the different variable data types available in BotPress. String stores information as a text, so something like a user name. Boolean stores information as true or false, so this can store whether or not a user is a return customer. Number stores variable data, so something like a user's phone number. Date stores a date and time, so something like a user's appointment date, for example. Object is a collection of key value pairs, so this is useful for storing the results of an API call, for example. Array is a collection of other variables, so arrays can contain multiple strings or multiple objects, for instance. A list entity is a variable from a set number of choices, so let's say you had to make your user select a certain day of the week. Pattern entity stores information that follows a set pattern, so for example, flight numbers that always have the same number of alphanumeric characters, and finally target, which store, exchange, and reference your conversation. These variables are used for complex, multi-participant conversations, like when you need to escalate a user conversation from a bot to a human. You can style text cards using Markdown format, as long as the channel your bot is deployed on supports that formatting. You can use double asterisks for bold text, single asterisks for italic text, and send message cards also support hyperlinks. Put the text you want to be clickable in square brackets, and then in parentheses, with the link you want it to point to. Let's test it all out. And there we go, simple Markdown. In BotPress Cloud, you can add collaborators to your workspace, and you can build and edit bots together. To add collaborators into your workspace, click on the gear icon on the top right corner of your dashboard, and from here, navigate to Collaborators. For this screen, you can add collaborators using their email address. You can also manage their access permissions and remove unwanted collaborators. Styling your bot allows you to customize its appearance however you like. Currently, the only bot experience that supports styling is our web chat, meaning when you deploy your bot to a website that users access through an icon. The bot generated when you click Share in the studio is only meant for prototyping, so it doesn't currently support styling. You can style your bot using the BotPress styler. First, navigate to styler.botpress.app. From here, you've got 2 options. You'll start with the simpler one, which is simply style your bot. From this list of options, you can change whatever you like. So, for example, I'll change the user's chat bubble color, I'll change my bot's chat bubble color, and I'll also change the color of my bot's chat container. Then, you'll see your changes reflecting code which I know over here. The next option provides a wider range of customizations if you wanted to customize your bot. So, if you're familiar with CSS and you want to customize your bot even further, just navigate over to the advanced styler. Here, you can write custom code to even further customize the style of your bot. Once you're happy with your customization, regardless of which method you use, we'll have to generate a style sheet. This is really just a set of rules that we're going to use to tell BotPress what we want our bot to look like. So, whether you chose style your bot with the advanced styler, navigate to the bottom of the page and click Generate Link. Then, click on this icon here to copy that link to our clipboard. This is our style sheet URL. Then navigate back to your BotPress workspace. Here, I'm in the workspace that's showing you the dashboard for the bot I'd like to customize. In the settings menu for our web chat, let's head on over to the field that says style sheet URL and paste that link we just copied. Now we hit save configuration, and wherever your bot is deployed will reflect the changes you made in the silo. Happy bot building. In this video, I'll show you how to set up a bot that sends the first message to your user. The first thing we'll do is create our trigger, which can be accessed over here in the card tray in the events category. For this video, I'll choose the conversation started trigger. Triggers are a powerful feature that allow your bots to do all kinds of things in response to a user's action. But for this video, we'll just focus on making your bot send the first message. So when we select a trigger, in this case, conversation started, what we're doing is telling our bots to do this action as soon as a user starts a conversation. In this case, that means opening the web chat by clicking on the chat icon. Now, in a new node, let's create our welcome message. So over here, once the trigger has been activated, I'll place a standard node, and inside it, I'll put a send message card. And just for the purposes of this test, I'll say, hello, welcome to our conversation. Now, with a simple message, I welcome our user. But you can use this message to say things like, here are the different ways I can help you, or ask a question. Now, let's put everything together. When your trigger activates, it essentially works like a starter. So what I'll do is I'll take the path leading from my trigger, and I'll send it over here into my welcome message. That means whenever the conversation starts, this is what's going to happen. Now, let's test it out. Don't forget to publish, and for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll show this happening on a shareable widget. But this will also work if you have your bot deployed on the website as well. So I'll click this, and right away we see my bot sends the first message. Awesome. Happy bot building. In this video, I'll walk you through the different file types and formats that you can use as your bot's knowledge base. You can create a knowledge base by uploading one or more documents in file formats like PDF, HTML, text files, and Microsoft Word. This is great for things like user manuals, guides, and other long, informative documents. You can input individual web pages to be added to your bot's knowledge base, or you can input an entire site map, and BotPress will index everything listed within that site map. This is great for giving your bot specific information, like a blog post or a product page, or to feed your entire website in one easy step. Your bot can also search the internet for you. When selecting a web search knowledge base, you can have your bot search on individual web pages or the entire web. You can also choose to exclude certain websites that you already know aren't producing relevant information or are outside the scope of your bot. This option is great because it gives your bot an added layer of flexibility in its ability to search for timely and relevant answers. You can also create a knowledge base from directly within this video by selecting the text document knowledge base format and placing information directly within the editor. This is great for simple and flexible sources of knowledge or for information that you want to add to over time. Happy bot building. In this video, I'll show you how to use the BotPress quick reference tool. Variables in BotPress allow you to store user input and information, all while making your bot conversation feel more natural than it would if you were to constantly prompt your user for the same information. Variables also store information about the conversation itself, as well as information about tools relevant to BotPress, so things like the raw answer from the knowledge base query. The newest addition to the BotPress Cloud Studio is the Quick Reference Guide, which you can access from here in the Explorer panel. When you click into it, you're presented with a list of some of the most commonly used formulas and variables, and all you need to do is copy what you need to your clipboard and continue right along with building your bot. Pretty cool. Happy bot building. Good afternoon, bot builders, or good evening, or good morning, depending on what time it is in the world where wherever you're joining us from. I want to say happy Halloween to those of us who observe this day. If that is something that you're interested in doing, I will say that Halloween has always been my holiday. I'm much more of a later on in the year kind of fellow. But for all of you who are doing spookies and scaries, I don't think you're doing stuff. Where's my costume? I thought about wearing a costume for today's stream, but I thought that might get a bit cumbersome if I was wearing big plastic fangs. So instead, I just wore a comfortable sweater because it's nice and cold outside here in Montreal. I'm streaming from. All right, I've got a fun stream plan for all of us today. Perhaps fun is subjective, but I've got an informative stream plan for all of us today. If you are a mainstay on our YouTube channel, at the end of last week, you would have seen the upload video of conversational memory. So the plan for today's stream is we'll talk a bit about what it means to have conversational memory, what that term is, what that defines, let's say, and then how you can actually pop it into your chatbot as well. So that's kind of that's the overview for today's stream. But as always, I'm going to say, hi, I'm Robert. If you're new here, these are the basics office hours. So we go over things like basic tasks and actions in BotPress, and you're more than welcome. In fact, we're strongly encouraged to ask questions. Don't worry about derailing the course of the stream or being off topic or whatever. I'm really here to chat with you guys. So I usually have a plan, but of course, I'm always looking to go off plan. What is the purpose of a plan if not to be too together? So hello, everyone. So let's talk a bit about conversational memory. Let's talk a bit about how AI can help you do this and how you can set this up in BotPress. I think the first thing is perhaps let's begin with an example. So if I were to say to use chat, one interface, all your favorite AI models, zero complexity. With so many different APIs from AI model providers, it can be challenging to consistently experiment and integrate across models. Postman's new AI protocol changes all of that. Hey everyone, Sterling here. Today, we're looking at a new feature in Postman that's currently in beta. If you've ever tried working with multiple AI providers, you know that each one has its own way of doing things, different authentication methods, different parameters, different everything. Our new AI protocol feature simplifies all of that, giving you one consistent way to work with AI model providers like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, with so many more on the way. Let me show you how it works. Nested among your favorite protocols, you'll notice a new option called AI. This opens up the new AI protocol interface. You'll notice the interface looks similar to your standard Postman request. We've got the request bar, user prompt on the left, system prompt on the right, and the bottom half is where you'll see responses. In the request bar, instead of selecting one protocols you're used to, you can choose from one of the available AI providers and models. Let's choose GPT-4o. And since this is the first time I'm selecting OpenAI as the model provider, I'm taking the authorization tab to add my OpenAI API key. Now that I've added my API key, it's time to start sending requests. We'll start with the user prompt and hit send. Under the hood, the AI protocol configures everything for you, so you don't have to. And there's your short story. And just like you'd expect from an API response you'd see in Postman, it's complete with status code, response time, and payload size. Plus, we've also added token count. Now let's say you want to change the system prompt. Speak like a salty pirate. And just like that, you've got a new response with a short story written by a salty pirate. Okay, so we've got the user and system prompts just how we like it. Now, I want to see how Google Gemini Pro does. Here we go. No need to reconfigure the endpoint or the request body. Another really cool feature are the settings. Everything that's available and configurable within an AI provider's API is part of the UI. And the settings change dynamically from model to model and provider to provider. Okay, everything looks good. Let's go ahead and save this into our collection. We'll call it Story About Robots and Landlubbers. We'll save it in our protocol collection. And there you have it. And that's the new AI protocol beta feature in Postman. And this is just the beginning. We've got more features coming, including code export, integration with Postman flows, and of course, additional AI models and providers. And we really want to hear from you. Head over to our Postman community forum and tell us what you think. What additional features would you like to see? And tell us if you're encountering any bugs. Your feedback is crucial in helping us make the AI protocol feature better. Don't forget to check out our AI agent building public workspace. Links to our public workspace and the Postman community forum are in the description down below. And join me in my next video where I'll show you 2 ways to evaluate LLMs in Postman using the collection runner and flows. If you found this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more API and AI content. Thanks for watching. Want to know which AI model is best for your project? Today, I'll show you 2 powerful ways to evaluate LLMs using Postman. Hey everyone, it's Sterling here. So you've heard about GPT, Claude, Gemini, and a host of other AI models. But which one really fits your project needs? That's exactly what we're tackling. We're going hands-on with Postman to show you 2 solid methods for comparing multiple AI models side by side. First, I'll demo how to evaluate using the collection mode, so you can benchmark performance, content length, and token usage all at once. Then, we'll switch gears and use Postman flows, an interactive approach that compares responses in real time. Whether you're a developer looking for raw data or someone who wants an instant snapshot of which model wins, we've got you covered. Let's jump in. Let's start with our first method using the collection. I've got Postman collection here pre-configured to test multiple AI models, some direct, like Grok and OpenAI, and some through AWS Bedrock, like Amazon and Anthropic.
Our goal is to run multiple scenarios, compare each one's performance, and visualize the test results in one place. Here is the JSON file that finds our test scenarios. For example, we've got a small model scenario where I want the shortest possible answer, and a large model scenario where I allow for a more verbose response. Each scenario details which models to run, so we can skip the rest, and benchmarks like maximum content length and total usage. Now let's run these scenarios in Postman. In the collection runner, I'll import the JSON file that we just saw and hit run. Immediately, we start to see the models being tested as we listed them. For each test that does run, we see either a pass or fail based on the benchmarks we set. Green means we sit under the threshold, for instance, token usage below 2,000. And red indicates a fail. Maybe a model took too long or used too many tokens. Now let's look at how the models performed. We've got 6 passing. These all look pretty good. And looks like no fails. Great. Let's take a closer look at our results. If we go to the results post, hit send, we get a nice response back from the API. And we export all of this for our usage later. However, magic happens when you go to the visualization. Here you can see the small models and the large models in a beautiful dashboard. In the dashboard here, you can see the total tokens, prompt tokens, completion tokens, response time, content length, and token per second. And you can see the performance of each one of the models, the best being in green and the worst being in red. And lastly, you can see the content, which are responses from the LLMs themselves. And you can see this for both the small models and the large models. This provides an at-a-glance summary of which model is delivering the best results or has the best overall performance. If you want more advanced analysis, you can export everything to CSV. Instead of pressing send, choose send and download. That file will contain all of your metrics, including the prompt, temperature, and the raw responses. Because it's a big data set, you can drop it into your favorite spreadsheet or tool for deeper comparisons. Now for our second method, using Postman flows. In this section, I'll walk you through the flow we created to evaluate LLMs, and then run it with different scenarios to show you how it works in real time. Here's the evaluation flow. Let's take a quick tour of the components. We begin with the start block, and it has 3 inputs. System prompt. This defines the overall instruction for the AI models, such as act as an output system. User prompt. This is the user's actual question or request that we want to test across the models. Lastly, evaluative instruction. These are the guidelines for how we want to compare the responses. For instance, we might specify which criteria to focus on: correctness, creativity, or brevity. Next, there are the 3 task modules, each wired in the start block inputs. You have the ChatGPT 4.0 block, the Claude 3.5 Sonnet block, and the Gemini 1.5 block. Each block receives the same prompts, so we can compare them under identical conditions. Now the fun happens in the Create with AI block. It collects the raw responses from each AI block, the prompts and evaluation instructions, a specialized task that says compare the AI responses and pick the best one based on our evaluated instructions. So effectively, our Create with AI block acts as our judge, looking at each one's output and ranking. Once the Create with AI block produces its findings, the results flow into a display block so we can see them right away on the canvas. Then, finally, it goes to an output block, which outputs the final evaluation, the original system and user prompts, and the best LLM. Now let's put this flow to the test. I've prepared a few scenarios that vary the system prompt, user prompt, and evaluated instructions. Scenario 1, the marketing agent. Here we'll have the various LLMs provide 5 different ideas for smart health and safety pet health. AI will evaluate the responses and provide the single best idea. Scenario 2, the API developer. In this scenario, the task can be LLM to provide comparisons in various API protocols, and the AI will evaluate and respond to the most durable response. By running these, you can see how each model performs under different conditions. You'll notice that Create with AI blocks evaluation changes to reflect each model's strengths or weaknesses. Let's run scenario 1. As we run this scenario, the flow gives us immediate feedback. You can see which one gave the most suitable answer and why it was chosen based on the evaluated instructions. Let's run scenario 2. The best part about this process is that it's repeatable. Simply tweak the system prompt, user prompt, or evaluated instructions, and hit one flow. There you have it. 2 methods for evaluating AI models in Postman. So which method should you use? The collection runner is perfect for large-scale testing. Flows is better for interactive evaluation and improvement. Both give you powerful insights into how different AI models handle your specific use cases. Whether you're building an AI agent or just trying to pick the right model for your project, these tools will help you make data-driven decisions. And And in our next video, we'll showcase how we built a multi-stage AI agent. The collection runner and LLM eval flow are available in our public workspace. Dive in and start adapting them to your use cases. Make sure to watch our public workspace and stay updated on all things AI enforcement. We're constantly